there is a P-tape or an equivalent of a P-tape. I cannot tell you it's exactly a P-tape, but the fact that that Putin specifically, has something on Trump, absolutely. And if you see that, then everything else is explained. It's the only reason. It's the only explanation that fits every action. There is a P tape or the equivalent of a P tape.
James, let's cease all this talk about a looming or a potential constitutional crisis. It's here. The administration ignored a judge's order to halt a deportation, absent due process, probably lied about it. The Homeland Security boss said he's not going to be bothered by judges. Trump called for impeaching judges that rule against him. Some idiotic freshman congressman from Texas introduced an impeachment measure against this particular judge. Trump went on Fox TV, where else, to say he'd never violate a court order, just like he had no idea what Project 2025 was about, or that he was going to release his tax returns whenever he could, or any other premeditated lies. It's good that Chief Justice John Roberts gave Trump a light tap on the wrist, but it was Roberts' decision last year giving Trump criminal immunity from almost anything he does, carte blanche while he's president, that has emboldened him to even more recklessly stiff the rule of law. He's trying to undo Biden's pardons of Liz Cheney and Mark Milley under the absurd pretense that they were signed by AutoPen. There's only one reason he's doing that. That's because he wants to go after them. He on the deportation, he said that these Venezuelans were gang members. There's a big question as to whether they really were, and he used for only the fourth time in history the Alien Enemies Act. Every other time it's been used in wartime. Maybe we are at war with Venezuela, but I didn't know about it. We really are in a constitutional crisis, and it's time for people to stand up to that.
Well, we are. It's undoubted. And there are two things that are going on. And there's a new book out, I'm told, by this guy, Alec Eisenstadt. I might be got his name wrong, who followed the whole Trump operation. And it's all about resentment and revenge. So that's what all of this is about. Mm-hmm. He wants to go after his enemies. He wants to do all this. And concurrently with this, you have the whole Doge operation. So let's talk about Doge for just a minute. Why would they be? Did you know that number of people that work in Social Security Administration was at an all-time low when Donald Trump took office? That federal employment has not grown over the last 50 years. But why are they going ramshackling through, willy-nilly, cutting everything, getting rid of agencies? What's the motivation? Why are they doing this? Normally, politics, people try to not do unpopular things. But here, there's a lust for it. And the answer is simple. Because if you don't have, Colonel Mustard with the candlestick in the library when you were a kid, it's the Willie Sutton thing. That's where the money is. Mm-hmm. And what do they want with that money? They want to give it to people like Elon Musk and gazillionaires in the form of tax cuts. And they know that if they can't come up with the savings, that the markets are going to take not very kindly to this. And maybe there's somebody with enough courage, I don't know if the CBO does, to point all this out. But they're going after your Social Security so they can pay themselves off in the form of tax cuts. Don't kid yourself. They're going after your Medicare, your Medicaid for that. They're going after airline safety for that. They're going after food and drug safety for that. They're going after the national parks for that. It's all the Willie Sutton motive. They go in where the money is so they can get it for themselves. And Trump doesn't care. All he wants to do is, suck up to Putin and get all of his perceived enemies back. It's just where we are. It is not that complicated.
You're absolutely right. And on the international front, there really is a first cousin to this. On Ukraine, he's going to get rolled by Vladimir Putin because basically he's much more comfortable with a dictator like Putin than he is a struggling democracy. So therefore, he also wants to end the American role as the commander of NATO, begun under General Eisenhower in 1951, because he wants to do away basically with the prominent American role there. Caving into the Russians, it is time for every former military officer now, given what he's doing to NATO, given the people he's put in the Pentagon, starting at the top, given the fact that he plans to try to go after criminally Mark Milley, which is absurd. It's time for all those people. That's you, Jim Mattis, and others to speak out. What he's doing, he's putting at risk, a valuable institution, and it's just not bad business as usual. It's unconstitutional and imperiling business.
So, what physicists look for is a unified theory to explain something. Matter equal mc squared. I'm not a physicist. There's a
Yeah.
formula. It's so we're watching this stuff with Putin. We're watching us vote with North Korea, Belarus, and Russia. We're turning our backs on Ukraine. The Putin leaves the American representative waiting, I don't know, 8 hours in his out of office. He doesn't, and it's a chicken shit country. John McCain was right. It's a gas station masquerading as a country. Their military worth of shit. They don't even have an aircraft carrier. They got what is a rust bucket, Admiral Kuchinov or something. So there's got to be a unified theory that explains everything. It fits into one thing. And of course, we know what that theory is. There is a P tape or an equivalent of a P tape. I cannot tell you it's exactly a P tape, but the fact that the Russian, that Putin specifically, has something on Trump, absolutely. And if you see that, then everything else is explained. It's
Yep.
it's the only reason, it's the only explanation that fits every action. There is a P tape or the equivalent of a P tape.
Yeah. James, I fear that you were right. Let me turn to the Democrats for a second. There is a huge furor going on with a number of Democrats demanding that Chuck Schumer be toppled as Senate Democratic leader, primaried in 2028. Let's just review quickly what happened. The Republicans, on a virtual partisan party line vote, passed a 6-month budget extension to keep the government in operation. It's a bad bill. It has some bad provisions in it. It's 6 months. It's not the big stuff yet, but it was a bad bill, and I think all the Democrats that voted against it in the House were right. It went over to the Senate. There were two choices. Number one, you filibuster it. You take responsibility for killing it, at which point there would be a government shutdown. Usually, government shutdowns help Democrats. Democrats are seen as the party that wants government, Republicans do not. I fear it would have been different this time. Trump would have said, man, you know what? We got a great economy going, which we don't. There are all kinds of trouble spots, consumer confidence, the market. And he would have blamed all the problems on the Democrats, and he could have kept it going for a while. And moreover, his pal Elon Musk would just be you can't imagine how thrilled he would be that he wouldn't have to actually cashier people. He'd just say, never come back. He would have been even more emboldened. So the question was, if you did what Schumer did and you voted to keep the government going, which has got everybody such in arms, what were the options? What was the outcome? Where did it go? So I think I uncomfortably believe that Schumer ended up doing uncomfortably the right thing. Final point, two final points. Number one, they say this was our moment of leverage. No, what's the leverage? You're a minority party. The moment of leverage will come when they try to cut Medicaid. At some point, they're going to have to do that, maybe Social Security and other things. Then you have leverage and you ought to utilize it to the maximum extent. I am not one of those like Tom Suozzi and Mark Penn who say work with them when you can. You can't. But this was not the time. This was not the fight. Moreover, replace Chuck Schumer with who? I don't know what the answer to that is. I wish Chuck would stay off television and just stay inside and be the able legislator that he is. But I have to say, James, I think he's getting a bum rap on this one.
So, you, you, we know we're in this. This is a long fight. We got a whole process, and there are going to be plenty of hills to die on. The debt extension,
Right.
clearly, is going to be one. Reconciliation will be another. The tax cuts, trying to ram it through, will be another. So, if you ask me, did Senator Schumer? By the way, I heard personally from one senator who told me that this senator voted against it, but she's glad that Senator Schumer did what he did. And Senator Whitehouse said the same thing.
Yep.
And he was protecting his 2026 incumbents. All right, we're not going to let it. We're not going to let this do us back. But the most, I think, this is to be determined. But potentially, this might be a very good strategic long-term play. Why do I say that? So let's say they can't. They don't have the votes on reconciliation. They got to go get Democratic votes because we're not going to give it to them. And inevitably, they're going to say, "Well, we're responsible for shutting the government down." But we have another arrow in our quiver during that debate. We said, look, we went out of our way. We had 10 United States senators that at bitter heat eviscerated in their own party that tried to work and keep this enterprise going. And you just turned your back on them. So I think down the road, this is going to give us some credibility. And I don't agree. There are going to be plenty of chances. Don't worry. There's plenty of times for us to fall on our sword. This probably wasn't the most opportune time, and this will I'm hoping will probably make it easier down the line when, by necessity, we're going to have to do this. What I tell Democrats, don't worry, Armageddon is coming. That there's going to be a point where, to the extent that we have any power, it's going to be all in everybody. But when you don't have superior forces, you have no power, you have to plot and scheme as to the time and manner that you have some control of when you fight Armageddon. And that's why we are in one of the things that, is going to have an effect. I'm not going to tell you it's going to change everything around, but Wisconsin Supreme Court is going to have an effect. And then Virginia governor have effect. We don't have a lot of tools at our disposal. We're pretty ragtag. We don't have any power. So we need to play for every little break we can get.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I don't think the choice was whether you take him on now or you basically, decide you're not going to fight. Of course you're going to fight. You ought to fight every chance you get. But when you're in the minority, and as you say, the opportunities are not plentiful right now, you pick your fights. This was not a smart one to pick. There will be smart ones to pick, including the elections you cited, including reconciliation, including the debt ceiling, maybe including the budget funding in September. And I suspect I talked to the same senator that you did or may have, who said that even though she voted the other way, that Schumer basically saved the Democrats from an
Right.
embarrassment.
I suspect that we did.
Yeah.
So, I want people to think about this, and I would be interested, like Rick Atkinson or Ron Chernoff. But from my amateur reading of the founding of the country and Revolutionary War history, one of the most critical decisions was made by George Washington when he retreated from Long Island. The British came in, I don't know, had 80, 100 ships, and they came ashore at Long Island, went through, New York City. Where did he retreat to? A place called Valley Forge. And
Heard of
then
it.
what happened? Yeah, right where you grew up. He camped there in the winter, and then, on Christmas Day, he crossed the Delaware. We won at Trenton. We won at Princeton. Probably the most critical battles of the entire Revolutionary War. Had George Washington fought him on the beaches, in Long Island, we undoubtedly would have lost. So don't tell me that there is not a successful maneuver that has been tried in the past called the strategic retreat, because it is, and it's called for. It's a very sometimes it's very effective maneuver, and that can be true in military history. It can be true in political history. You want to engage the battle under the terms and in conditions that are most favorable for you. The Union fell back on the first day of Gettysburg. But where did they fall back to? The high ground.
Right.
Okay, always in these, we must fight now every day. It's when we get up in the morning, we have to fight. We have to spit nails all day. There's a time for that,
Right.
and it's coming quick. It's not. No one's saying you got to wait a year and a half. Okay, it's almost certainly coming. What's the official meteorological summer starts June the 22nd. Of course, down here it starts on May the 1st, but that's all right too. Um, it's coming. Don't worry. The battle is going to be engaged, but just, maybe we fall back to the high ground, or maybe we end up at Valley Forge, which, of course, my other favorite thing about Valley Forge, it was the first vaccine mandate ever. If you were George Washington's army, you had to have a smallpox vaccine. That you couldn't opt out. Bobby Kennedy would have told him to go fuck himself if he would have been with George Washington at Valley Forge. But that's the history of our country, and that's happened time and time again. And I'm all for aggression, but they fell back. I guess it was Reynolds, Hancock. They fall back the first day, but they'd fall back to the higher ground.
Well put. The choice is not between caving in and fighting every day. The choice is picking your spots, and you're absolutely right.
Precisely.
And the high ground is you can see it now. It's not that far away. And my guess is that Chuck Schumer, who I have criticized sometimes in the past, Chuck Schumer will be front and center in that fight.
Yeah, and again, the other thing I'll just come back to what we talked about earlier. Never talk about the cuts, never talk about Doge, never talk about any of this without talking about motive. Because motive explains everything.
Yeah.
And, some people think, well, they just gratuitous line to hurt people. They don't care if to hurt people. I don't think that's incidental to their thinking. They just want the money.
Yeah.
And that's where the big money is.